Hi and welcome back to the Free Swatches channel. Well, this video today is the fourth one in the series of turning £100 into a Rolex watch, and we've got off to a pretty good start. So far I've bought the watch, I've repaired the watch and got it ready for sale, and put the watch up for sale. So this fourth video, is at the point where we're in between selling the first watch and buying the second watch. Thanks very much for everyone who's subscribed and all the new views that we've had. It's been really great to sort of get some more people along for this journey. As far as news is concerned on the watch itself, it's up for sale on eBay at the moment, and the auction finishes this Friday. So it's currently Tuesday today, so we've got a few more days to go. I put the watch up on Friday before the last video went up. And the plan was, as I mentioned in the last video, was just to put the Tissot watch up for sale and to put it on with no reserve, starting at a penny. Because I thought, well, let's just try this out and see how we get on. As I said, I've said in the previous videos, I'm new to eBay, I'm new to selling watches and so on, so I wasn't quite sure how that would go. So on Friday night at 6 o'clock, I put the watch on just before I left work. We put the watch on the auction and I walked home. I live about a mile away from here, and by the time I got home we were on 14 bids. The watch has gone up to £180. So the good news for me is that the first watch, in theory, as long as the sale goes through, even at 180, we've made a good profit, because I bought the watch for £80, we fitted the strap for £5, so I'm already looking at being in profit for that particular watch. So what I want to do in today's video is to start having a look in the next sort of price category and thinking, well, what can I buy next? Because we've started off with a Tissot. It was a nice watch. I bought a very sort of what I thought was a safe bet, a watch that looked to be in good condition, wasn't too much for a risk. What I want to do now is to look at that price bracket, say 180 to say 250, to see what we can get in that area. Because when I get paid for the Tissot, and I send the Tissot watch off to the buyer, I've then obviously got to buy the next watch. But today, as we're in between, we're waiting for that sale to go through. Let's have a look and see what we can find. So I'm just going to get onto the Mac. I've got a MacBook here. We're going to go through, have a look on eBay, have a look at some of the options that I've got, and see what we think. So if you see anything when I'm looking through and you think that would be a great buy, or I've missed something, or any of the watches I look at today look interesting to you, then please let me know in the comments. Because who knows, it might be the watch that we buy for the next project. Things that I've got in mind for looking for the next watch are that obviously to try and level up, I'm going to have to try and add as much value as I can to whatever I buy. So I'm going to be looking really for projects. I really want something that needs a lot of work, that needs quite a bit doing to it, because obviously that should reflect on the price I buy it for, and hopefully the bigger gap between the price I buy and the price I sell. The other thing is I'm quite keen to get into some of those brands that we all know and love, like especially Omega. It'd be great if I can get into an Omega watch on the next purchase. It is possible, I think, to buy an Omega watch at that price, sort of 180, 250, if you get something that really needs a lot of work. So I'm going to take a look today. I'll be searching for Omega watches, we'll be searching for watches for repair in general, see what we can find, and we'll go through that together. So I'm going to get onto the Mac now, and what we'll do is a screen share. So up here you'll be able to see what's going on, and obviously we can look at watches together as we go through. Right, so we're going to make a start. Right, so I've got a search up now for Omega watches, used Omega watches, male watches in the department of men, the eBay men department, and I've also put a filter on the price from zero for anything that's in an auction that's starting off at zero, and it may be between zero and my budget, and up to £250. So this may be a bit over what I get for the Tissot. I honestly don't know how it's going to end up, because as I haven't sold one of these watches, those watches before. So anyway, as you'll see up here, we've got the results here. So I'm going to start looking through. So I immediately see a couple of gold-plated watches there, which are probably not quite right. I mean, the problem with gold-plated watches is that obviously you can't do much in terms of restoring the case. If the plating is poor, then what can you do? I can get it replated, but ultimately it's going to cost a lot of money to do that, and so not so sure about going down that road at this stage. I mean, perhaps later on, if we were looking at really spending some of our, we've got a bigger pot of money, we could do that. But for now, I really need a repair where I'm going to be able to do the work myself. Right, so it's quite difficult, the watches I'm looking at the moment, because A lot of these sort of got quite a long time to go, like 6 days, and you don't quite know where they're going to end up. But I'd certainly be interested in looking at anything that looks like it could be a project. Most of these watches, to me, I would have thought are going to be, going to end for more than £250. I mean, let's just take a very straightforward example here. This is, in the description of the seller, a stunning men's Omega Seamaster 600 crosshair white dial vintage watch. So the bid's £210 for 2 bids, 5 days to go. Right, so just looking at that photo, this watch has been subject to a really awful dial restoration. I don't know if you can see that, but there's not a lot right about that dial. One thing I would say, it probably never had a crosshair on it. Another thing, that it probably wasn't that configuration, that black and white fin, because where they've got that dial from, I've no idea. Well, that dial restoration, it really does look quite bad. You'll also see on the case, the lugs on the side of the lugs, they're really polished away. This is a typical watch that's been sort of tarted up for sale, the exact opposite of what I'll be trying to buy, and what I would advise other people to avoid as well if they're looking. I mean, they've got the Omega pouch in there as well, to make it all look like it's official. Those pouches, they're actually free if you have a watch repaired with Omega. In this instance, they could have bought that on eBay for £10 to £15. It doesn't add any value, especially for me. It's interesting also, you notice the description, the word stunning immediately. I mean, it looks shiny, but stunning is obviously a subjective word, and a word that's loaded with the suggestion that's really good. Then you scroll down to the actual description of the watch. Stunning men's Omega Seamaster 600 crosshair white dial vintage watch. I mean, that's it. There's not much to go on there. They're not giving anything away in terms of the condition and so on. I'd certainly disagree with the word stunning. I would say the watch has been over restored and has been restored incorrectly, and it's always unfortunate when this happens, because they just lose their character when the watch is over restored. I mean, let's just go back to that photo now and see if we've got any other photos I can show you just to sort of prove the point. Sort of vague pictures really. Like a picture here that we've got in the box. I mean, that all looks nice and clean and tidy, but it doesn't say much. It doesn't actually show the watch in any great detail anyway. So I think that this listing is aimed at someone who maybe isn't aware of how an Omega watch should look. And as I'm sure if you're watching this, you probably know that a vintage watch should look like a vintage watch. It should show a bit of life, because then it's most likely it's going to be more original and it's going to be more appealing, whereas this watch has had a lot of that removed, which is unfortunate. Also, that in terms of bidding and so on, it's interesting that 2 bids, £210, 5 days to go. I mean, obviously we don't know the history of those bids and where they've come from, but there's a good chance there that that watch is going to go for more than I've got. So that's a bit concerning, but we will stick to the we'll go back to the search for that we've got here for Omega. Right, so we're back on our list of watches now. Just going down now. So yeah, the difficulty here is that a lot of these are obviously got quite a long time to go, so that makes it really quite difficult to know how much they're going to go for, of course. Just going to see if I can filter this, so we can go filter it by, so we're on best match. So what I'll do, we're going to go to ending soonest, and hopefully this will give us a bit of a better idea. Yeah, that's better. So for example, we've got at the top here, vintage Omega gold capped Geneva automatic, £161, 3 hours left. So I mean, we know that that's obviously heading, the numbers are a bit more realistic. There's a newer Omega DeVille there. Right, so vintage Omega Constellation men's watch for spares or repair. We'll take a look at this, because this could be interesting. Right, so this is a watch from the probably 1970s, early 80s. This will be an Omega. This is the Constellation, which are generally more desirable. Glass is scratched. See the crown's missing there as well. Let's just have a look at some of the other photos. What we got? Yeah, there's the case back. So this is the sort of condition that I'd like to buy a watch in. If you look at that case back, you can see it hasn't been messed around with. It's it looks like it's been worn a fair bit. It's probably been thrown into a drawer because the customer, whoever's bought the watch has lost the crown. They've just thrown it in the drawer. and the movement photo as well. That's 1011, which is the correct caliber. That's a chronometer. It's the chronometer rated version of the 1010. So I'd be quite happy to buy a watch with the 1010 or 1011 caliber, but as you can see, this is probably going to go for too much money. And also, let's be honest about the styling. It's not the most desirable styling. It's not in the vintage category as such, I wouldn't say. It's not like your sort of archetypal vintage watch. That design of the case is quite unusual. But at the right price, I'll be quite prepared to give this a go, because I know I can refinish the case without without sort of changing too much. I could just lightly brush the surface, which is going to improve it. I know I have to get a new crown. I can clean the case. We can get it fully serviced. It'll probably make for a reasonable watch. But the only difficulty is with the design. It's not the sort of design that you would necessarily think, oh, that's a really desirable thing to have. Also, it's going to go for too much money. But it's certainly interesting to have a look at that watch and just to sort of assess it for purposes of seeing what we can buy. So that says Omega DeVille watch not working there. £99. No one's bidding it. I'd be quite concerned to bid on something like that as well. Look at this, quite an unappealing watch, to be honest. Also, that's I can tell from that configuration, the hour minute hand, that'd be a 1377 caliber movement, and they are a bit tricky for parts. But also, look at this bracelet. There isn't not much of this watch left really that's sort of salvageable. I could have it plated, but what are you really going to end up with? Certainly don't think it's going to be anything that would help us move forward. Also, it's interesting, no bids, £99, so obviously I'm not the only one to think that this watch isn't really worth pursuing. It's good that they've put a back photo on there. Let's just have a look at that. Try and get that, just get that one to work. Just go through the photos. Yes, even worse on the back. Right, here we go. So there's our movement shot. Yeah, so there's the 1377 caliber movement. This is really just for my own interest, because, but I can see there's plenty of things wrong with this. I don't know if you can see where the battery goes in. If you look at the battery connector on the top, you can see it's broken on the left-hand side. This movement's quite an unusual movement because the main plate acts as the positive contact for the battery. So this means that when the negative comes across, that's the battery contact, that everything that touches that has to be insulated. So the screw on the left is going into a rubber bush, which is then going into the circuit. It's a kind of back to front way of doing it, but there we go. You can also see, if you see this orange part at the bottom of the image, that's a capacitor, and you can see a lot of there's a problem there. It looks like it's been repaired, because it's quite a common problem, because that wire is really, really thin, that the wire gets broken. This is going to need a new circuit. There's damage to the parts of the setting lever. It's in a real state. I don't think that watch is worth £10 even, because what are you going to do with it ultimately? It might be useful for spare parts, I suppose, for someone, but it's certainly no good for for what we're trying to do. Right, so something in Uruguay there. I'll probably try and avoid that. Right, let's look at one more Omega watch. I'm getting the feeling I'm going to struggle to get an Omega unless I get a real bargain. Oh, here we go, Omega Geneva wristwatch, £185. Now, this is encouraging. Let's have a look at this. Okay, right, so this is, it's interesting. So what we have there, the Omega Geneva the Geneva line was, in many ways considered to be the sort of entry-level Omega watch, and this is probably, I'd say, from the very early 70s. It's going to be a 3-piece dustproof case, which makes it a bit less desirable. It's been engraved on the back. Let's have a look at that. Sorry, let's get the photo up for that. Oh, gone too far. Let's go back. James. J. James, 25 years. So it's a presentation watch. It's quite often that you see, with presentation watches, you see that they buy the what would effectively have been the cheaper watches when they were new. I don't know what that says about the people they work for. They also didn't really employ the services of a particularly talented engraver. The engraving doesn't look particularly good. I'm not put off by that engraving. I could actually remove that. It doesn't look too terrible. It's your usual sort of usual sort of machine engraving on there. That won't be particularly deep. That will come out, so that's okay. So let's have a look at a couple of other photos. My main concern at this one at the moment is that I was ideally thinking about a buying, you know, a sort of a Seamaster or something in a waterproof case next, because those watches are a little bit more sort of substantial, really. This watch is probably, in terms of the movement, it's probably going to be a 630 caliber. The Omega 630 caliber is quite a small movement, and as such, to me personally, I don't know if this is the same for everyone else, but I regard those watches as a bit less desirable, because the movements, it'll be a 630. It's the centre seconds version of the 620 caliber. It was fitted to lots of ladies' watches, and it's a small movement. Really, if you the movements that you should have in these watches that you're more desirable or better movements are the 601 or the 420. These are much better movements, or the 30mm if you could go back a bit in time for Omega calibers. So I don't know. This watch could well be within budget, but I just don't feel it has quite as the desirability. What I'll do though, I will watch this one, because I think at £185 I could service that, put it on a slightly more attractive strap and so on. It needs a crown, so I could actually, for about sort of £20 or £30, I could get a new crown for it. I could probably make something on that. That's a possibility. The only thing I would say though is that you know, if this is the sort of watch I'm going to get from Omega, I might be best to look elsewhere at something a little bit different, simply because, you know, do I really want to buy the sort of worst entry-level Omega watch? Am I better to buy something like you know, once again, I could maybe get another Tissot, something a bit more desirable, like a PRS 516, something along those lines, and maybe add the value that way, rather than sort of going down the route of buying one of the you know, less desirable Omega watches. So what we'll do then, I'm going to swap brands now. In fact, what I'll do, I'll just do a general search for watches in that price range, and we'll see what we can find, because it'll be interesting to see just generally what watches are available. Okay, so I've got a new search up now. This is, I thought let's go a bit more general. I've got vintage watching, because, I mean, really, that's where I can add the value as a specialist in vintage watches. So I put vintage watching. I've got male only, and the other thing I've done is filtered the price. Whereas before I went from zero, I've gone from £50, because obviously there's a lot of junk on eBay. I really want to sort of try and cut out all of the, you know, non-working piles of ladies' wristwatches and things that no one wants. So I've cut the budget 50 to 250 on the filter. I've gone for ending soonest. So we'll have a look down and see if we can find anything this way. It'd be interesting to see anyway. Right, so watches from India, not going to go there. That's just not worth it. Okay, vintage Longines. It's a gold-plated quartz dress watch. Not that desirable, so I'll keep moving along. What we got? Extremely rare vintage Doxa, anti-magnetic. This might be extremely rare, but it hasn't attracted much attention because it's on no bids. It's got an hour left. Suggests to me it's probably not going to be much value to add there. Seiko calculator. Just no. It's just not an option. Right, so keep scrolling down. So here we have a rare gents vintage Rolex precision wristwatch. Sounds ideal. So wouldn't it be funny if the second watch I bought in the series was actually a Rolex, and so £100 to a Rolex in 2 moves, but not quite the Rolex we're after, of course, because this one is not a Rolex Datejust, it's a Rolex Precision Vintage, spares or repair. Okay, so let's have a look at the photo. Oh, it's a pretty poor quality photo, to say the least. I mean, it's also got a very strange texture to the photograph. Well, there's not much right about that, is there? So it's got fixed bars, which is interesting. The dial looks like it's been that minute track on the sub-dial looks like it's been painted by hand. The hour hand is bent, the minute hand's on there, the seconds hand's fallen off. We've got a case back, stainless steel back. There's the balance. So what you can see now is the balance wheel at the top, and then we've got the actual balance cock that holds it in place. And that's both those parts are loose. But there's one part that connects these two parts together called the hairspring, which the balance wheel swings on, and it's missing. I mean, that's a pretty big problem. I have got some parts of these early Rolex movements, but I certainly haven't got one of those. So let's just have a look at that movement shot then, and see what we got. Right, okay, so here is the gap where the balance should be. As you can see, there's no balance there, obviously, it was on the side. We've just got to decide on this. Right, so you can see we've got one case screw there. It's just in a dreadful state. I mean, I did say I wanted a project and something, I wanted to be a bit more adventurous, but I mean, this looks like it's been chewed by an animal. It's in such a state, I really don't think that we can go there. So maybe the Rolex is going to have to wait a bit longer. I don't think we're going to quite get there with that one. So let's just go back to the results now and see what we can find. Right. Okay. It's not looking good at the moment, is it? I'm starting to get a little bit concerned over the next move. Looks like I'm going to have to do quite a bit of eBaying and trawling to try and find something worth buying. So here we have a vintage 60s caliber Tissot, very rare, unique opportunity. So last time I looked, there were 2p's in opportunity, but to be fair, the watch is listed in Uruguay, so second language and all that. Right, so there's a PR516. That's the watch that I mentioned earlier by coincidence. So we'll have a look at that. Now these are, I mean, it's a shame it's another Tissot because obviously it'd be nice to do some variety, but these are pretty great watches, the 516s. They've got a, they're from the early 70s. They've got that sort of chunky look to them. They've got lovely blue dials, and this dial I'm immediately drawn to because it looks really good. What happens with this kind of blue dial is that generally the blue fades out and you get a brassy colour coming through underneath. So it's unusual to see one in such good condition. So I mustn't get carried away, but that's certainly a good looking dial. So let's look at some more photos. So here's a side profile. Right, so yeah, so I spotted the problem. That's not the correct bracelet on there. This is the correct clasp, but if we look at the bracelet from the side, I can tell from those links. I don't think that's right. So that's a shame. 792. So that's it's reasonable movement, but I can see there's you see a circular hole on the train bridge there. There should be a sticker there with the serial number on it from which you can date the watch. That's missing. But I'm worried about that bracelet, so I'm not going to go any further with that. I would quite like one of those, and it would certainly be a nice thing to add value to and to service and get right, but it's not going to be that one, I'm afraid, so we'll just head back and carry on. Yeah, the more I scroll down, the more worried I'm getting now, actually, because I'm wondering, how long am I going to be spending scrolling to try and find something that's worth buying? It's a bit of a concern, but there we go. That's the situation we're in, and we've got to find something, so we'll just keep going, Right, so there's nothing on that first page. We'll do a bit more scrolling on vintage watch, just to see if we can find one more to look at, and if there's nothing there, then I'll try some specific brands and see if we can come up with something. So Waltham there. Oh, okay. So Swiss Emperor chronograph steel. That looks good. I mean, vintage chronographs are very popular, and they're always really more popular than your standard three-handed watch. And so, if I could get a chronograph watch, that would be really exciting. So these sort of watches that you see with the Valjoux movements, there's lots of different brands. So Swiss Emperor, I mean, okay, it's not a desirable brand, but the fact it is a chronograph and it's got the Valjoux movement is desirable in itself. I'll have to keep a close eye on this though, because it's already on £243, but we'll have a look at it anyway, because these are the sort of watches I'll be heading for really in the future in terms of trying to buy something that's fairly desirable. So Swiss Emperor, I mean, the dial looks good, the hands are all nice and clean. It's quite typical of this style of watch from the early 70s, where lots of brands were sort of created using the Valjoux movement. They put a name on the dial and print the dial, and obviously and make the watch up. And yeah, from the front it looks pretty good. These sort of painted bezels can suffer. It's just paint on the top of that bezel, and this one's looking pretty good. Might be still something there at 110, but overall it's good. Nice and dirty as well, that's how we like them, of course. Right, there's more photos from the front, photo from the side. Right, so it has got what looks like a later crown on it, and that is quite an unappealing crown. I think we could improve that. The watch probably never had a signed crown, because these sort of watches, these companies didn't tend to go to the trouble of making signed crowns. They were often getting the watches made by other manufacturers, so a generic crown it was. So that's certainly something that I don't think we'll worry about. I mean, I can put a crown on there without, sorry, I've just lost the watch there, let's go back to that. I can put a crown there without too much expense. Let's have a look at the back. Right, here's our back. Yeah, it looks good. I mean, it doesn't look like it's been into, you know, it doesn't look like it's had a lot of work. It's certainly not all over polished like that first watch we looked at today. So this is the sort of watch I'll be quite happy to buy. It's a project, it can be improved. There's nothing seriously wrong with it. It's just, well, hopefully not. Some of us haven't seen inside. From a cosmetic point of view, there's nothing seriously wrong with it. I can add value to it. So I'll certainly, you know, keep an eye on this. The concern is, of course, that this auction is going to go for too much money and it's going to be outside the budget. But I'm quite encouraged that I've found something that I'll be quite happy to buy. So that's certainly something to bear in mind, and I'll see where that ends up. So just to get back to the actual listing, so we're £243 on 20 bids, 9 hours to go. So obviously that's got a bit of a way to climb probably before we actually reach the end of the auction. But yeah, we'll see how that one goes. Be interesting to see. Okay, so we've got a new search up. I've just put in the word Longines. Longines is obviously a great brand, and I've got a feeling I could probably stretch to one of those, working on the basis that we're going to get between 180 and say £200, or maybe a little bit more for the Tissot. So we'll have a look down here now, see what we've got. So the men's Longines dress watch, superb. Now I'm quite interested in that because they did make some of those in a gold case. If that's a gold watch, and they haven't listed it as a gold watch, we could be on something. So let's get some photos of the case up. Nice to have it in the box. Let's see the case. I reckon it's gold plated. It's got to be gold plated, isn't it? They're not showing the case back, of course, which is a shame. I'm going to work on the assumption that's gold plated. I don't think it's going to be worth much more than they're asking for. So we'll just forget about that one. Move on. Longines skeleton gents oversized wristwatch. I mean, we've just got to have a look at this just for the sake of it, really, just because it's in Bulgaria. I mean, let's just have a look anyway. Right, so there we go. Look at that. So we have a skeletonized movement. It's amazing what people do to old watches, isn't it? I mean, I think this is just an old Longines pocket watch movement that's been skeletonized. It's got some sort of rough looking engraving on it. Let's skip through the photos. Yeah, there we go. I mean, obviously this is a subjective thing, but I mean that's just an absolutely awful looking object, I think. I mean, that movement would have probably been quite, you know, attractive in its own right. I mean, I don't know if you can see the barrel. They've actually chopped out sections of the barrel wall so you can see the mainspring. Admittedly, if you skeletonise a watch, that's going to be quite interesting, because when you wind the watch, the spring is going to gather on the arbor in the middle. But I don't know if you can see on here, you probably can't, but I can tell from my screen, you can see all the marks where it's been cut out. It just looks really kind of just bad, you know. Oh, it's just, yeah, it's quite a depressing looking thing. I'm sure some people would like this. I mean, they've polished the case. Yeah, it's just a converted pocket watch. And there's the movement from the back, which looks a lot better for not being attacked by a saw, I think. At least it looks like it, you know. It's a shame you can see through the balance and you can see where it's been cut out on the other side. Oh dear, it's, yeah, interesting to see, but obviously no good to us, but just an interesting watch to look at in terms of being pretty awful, I think. Right, so let's keep scrolling down. Nothing's coming up at the moment. Vintage gents gold-plated wristwatch spares or repair. That's not going to be any good. I'm getting quite fussy now, aren't I? You know, Longines Quartz, a Longines Hydra Conquest. Yeah, so that'll be. I mean, that's obviously going to go. Just attempts to have a look at it just in case, you know. Right, so yeah, that looks like it's in really good condition. I mean, it's almost pointless in me looking at this. This is going to be well out of budget. It's interesting to see the box all sort of self-destructing. Omega boxes did this as well. The boxes they made in the 80s had this kind of coating on them, and they were in this soft padded material underneath, and they just self-destruct. You don't even have to do anything. It's just the overall conditions, the environmental conditions around them are enough to cause them to fall apart, which is a shame. Nice to see the box and the papers and everything on this one. And this might be a watch that you might consider. But the thing is, How do I add value to this watch? It's in really good condition. I can tell from that first photo. If we just go back, if I look at the, you can look at that bracelet. That's really sharp. It hasn't had much wear at all. So I'm going to get the watch. All I can do really is list it a bit better with photos that have been colour balanced. I mean, these are really pretty poor photos. That's about all I'm going to be able to do. So yeah, that won't be one for us, but we'll just go back to the search results and carry on a bit longer. See if we can at least find something, something to look at, something that I might be able to buy. Right, so this is interesting. There's a calibre 490 here, and judging by the bids and the money, so £129, 3 bids, 4 days to go. And that is a crisp looking dial, and the hands are crisp as well. Let's have a look at some more photos and assess the condition of the case. See what we've got. Yeah, I just want to look at the back. There we go. Right, so we have a gold-plated case. As you can see, the lugs are in quite poor condition. It's got a steel back on it. It's just never going to be anything. I just can't see myself buying that for sort of £200 and really adding much to it, Oh, so there's a Longines L3.617 there. Right, so this says, let's get rid of the photos, go back to the listing. Let's see what it says about the watch. This is obviously a newer quartz watch, but I'm thinking maybe it hasn't got a battery. Maybe I can brush it, get rid of the scratches and brush it and improve it that way. Let's just read the description. Right, Longines Opposition stainless steel quartz watch, beautiful condition, recently serviced, so I can't do anything there. New battery, spare loop, doesn't get worn anymore. Not certain about water resistance. So all I can do here really is to refinish the watch to make it look better. Let's just go through some photos and see what we got. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you see, there's not that, it's not listed particularly well. The photos are blurry, they're bad. You sort of wonder, don't you? Look at this photo here. You're advertising a lot. It's a watch, and you've got the newspaper in the background, on the side. It's, you just think, well, put a bit more effort in, maybe, and might actually get a good result, Let's just go back to that front photo. Don't know, not convinced by that. Ultimately, the design of this watch is fairly unusual. I would think I would probably struggle to sell something like that. It's probably why the watch hasn't had any bids yet. So I'll probably watch that, because it'd be interesting to find out what it does, but not getting a good sort of positive feeling about it at the moment. Right, let's see if we can keep going, see if we can get Longines watch that's worth our consideration and our time. Okay, so there's this could be interesting, a Longines gents watch. So we've got no bids, it's got quite a high starting price, 220. But in theory, if I get a few more bids and I'm lucky with the Tissot, we could potentially get onto something like this. So let's have a look at it. So first thing I noticed, which is nice, are those sharp lugs. That's good. The dial, that might be restored. If you see where it says Swiss made, it doesn't look particularly sharp, but you just can't tell. Let's go to the next photo and have a look. The loom in the hands doesn't look like it's been replaced, so there's a chance that dial isn't restored, but the photos once again are pretty awful. So let's move through some more photos, see what we can see. Okay, so we've got a Longines crown, we've got nice sharp lugs, so I'm happy with the case, that looks good. The dial's a bit of a risk, but could be worse. Here we go, photo of the back. Right, the back's not looking so good. It looks like it's had a bit of a polish. But it's old watch, you can probably forgive it for that level of polishing. Quite often, watchmakers would slip on the case back and they would scratch the area around the key slots, and then they'll try and polish them out, because back, we're going back sort of 30 years plus now. When watches were sent for repair, no one bothered to refinish or polish anything. That wasn't a consideration. It was just get the movement serviced, and it was only in the last, surprisingly, about the last 25 years that case refinishing has become a thing, and the manufacturers now make quite a big deal out of it. I'm sure those of you who enthuse over these things might have seen the brightening videos that they use to sell their after-sales service, where they've got elements of the case all taken apart and they're polishing them and so on. But back then it wasn't a thing, so there we go. So got any more photos we can look at? Yep, there's a few more. Here we go. We've got a movement shot. Let's look at that. Okay. Right, yeah, so the movement looks okay. I've got no problems there. Obviously I can't tell if it's been serviced or not, but what I can tell is that all the parts are there. There's no rust. The plates, are, as in like the barrel bridge, the bigger parts, have all got their plating on them still. So this is certainly a watch I'll consider. I'm quite pleased to have found something that might be worth our time, in the future. I think that, something like this, what was £220? If I spent £220 on that and serviced it, in honesty, I mean, I don't know for certain, because I don't know how much this watch will go for, but I can't see a massive profit. But I think it's a good watch, and so working on the basis that if we buy a good watch in the first place and we actually do something to it, we're probably going to be okay. That's the one to watch. So I'll definitely watch that Longines, and we'll consider that as well. Well, thanks for sticking with us during that video. I'm hoping that was of interest to look at some of these watches. It's certainly interesting for me to look and see what we're going to get to buy. My plan now that I've looked through what's available is I think I'm going to have to do quite a lot more looking through eBay to try and find something. Quite interested in that Longines and the chronograph as well. We'll see how that ends up. But ultimately, I haven't found anything where I think, yeah, that's the one. I suppose going through this, there's going to be some risks, and the next watch, I suppose, more money equals more risk. The risk is going to be a bit greater. So all I can do is sort of keep looking, and obviously in our next video that's coming up, we'll be looking at how the Tissot sale went, and also, if I've bought another watch. So hopefully, with any luck, in a week's time, we'll have the Tissot sale all done, and we'll also have a new watch on the way. So look out for that video, and thanks very much. If you saw anything in the video that you thought was good, then let me know, because that would be interesting. Please put a comment down below if you've got any ideas of watches in that category. Or maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. Maybe what I need to do is to buy another watch for £100 and do that up and make money that way. But the plan really was to sort of work up and sort of say, there's £200 now, let's turn that into 300. But if that's not an option with watches, then I could always look at the option of buying a similar watch again, similar to the Tissot, and maybe doing it that way. So what do you think? If you've got a sort of strategy that you think would work, then let me know, because obviously I'm open to any suggestions. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button, and also the bell for notifications. And thanks very much for watching the video. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks, and bye for now.